Hello again, YouTube. We're continuing on with our discussion of slavery in the Bible, and still looking at slavery in the Old Testament. Specifically, right now we're looking at Exodus chapter 21, verses 1 through 11. I just finished discussing the way marriages were arranged in the Old Testament, and specifically talked about how the fact that your marriages in the Old Testament were arranged and usually money exchanged hands. And so, for the most part, that explains what's going on here in verses 7 through 11. First of all, the first thing to note is that commentators do not see what's going on in verses 7 through 11 as a despicable or mercenary act on the part of a cold-hearted father. Rather, it is an act taken by a dad in protection and provision for his daughter, generally thought to be under extreme duress. Apparently, the daughter's parents are poor, and the father is trying to ensure financial stability for his daughter. This is in no way how skeptics put it, the right to sell their daughters into sexual slavery. It is about marriage and economic stability. Quoting from the JPS Torah commentary, 1989, in the ancient world, a father driven by poverty might sell his daughter into a well-to-do family in order to ensure her financial or future security. The sale presupposes marriage to the master or his son. Documents recording legal arrangements of this kind have survived, and the Torah stipulates that the girl must be treated as a free woman. Should the designated husband take an additional wife, he's obligated to support her. A breach of faith gains her freedom, and the master receives no compensation for the purchase price. The Hebrew term amah, A-M-A-H, used here does not mean a slave girl in the usual sense, since her status is quite different from the male slave. The following, speaking specifically of Exodus 21, the following laws safeguard her rights and protect her from sexual exploitation. Another point that needs to be made, secondly, commentators are quick to point out that this selling isn't real slavery. It's very, very different from the regular slavery transactions. This case is different from the debt slave institution. That is, one, it is done by the father for a dependent daughter rather than an independent self-selling female. Two, it is about marriage and childbearing instead of simple domestic service labor, and is therefore exempt from the must wait 6 years provision. Indeed, release would not have to wait nearly that long at all. The master would know very soon if he was not pleased with the bride-to-be. 3, there was multiple exit conditions, and 4, has additional protections and guarantees in it. Quoting from the World Bible Commentary, the provisions here stipulated for such a woman make it very likely that she was not sold into slavery for general purposes, but only as a bride, and therefore with the provisions restricting her on her husband concerning her welfare if he should become dissatisfied with the union. Such an interpretation makes it clear why the provisions for such a slave bride were given in sequence to the guiding principles for the protection of male temporary slave. The slave bride had special rights too, and if they were violated, she could go free. The third point here is polygamy was clearly allowed under the Old Testament. This passage in all likelihood deals with additional wives and concubines. Quoting here from The Marriage and Family in the Biblical World, Ken Campbell, 2003, in addition to the regular wife or wives, a man might also have one or more secondary wives or concubines who would bear him children. The most explicit statement prescribing a husband's behavior towards a wife occurs in Exodus 21, verses 7 through 11. The text concerns a concubine, but to be sure, according to the Jewish principle of, I'm going to try to say this, Qua Wa Homer, and I'll put it up on the screen, what applies in a minor case also would apply in a major case. One may assume that husbands were to treat their wives with even greater dignity. Because of the uncertainties in the meanings of the 3 critical words in verse 10, there is some question concerning the obligations placed upon a man. However, on the analogy of the extra-biblical formulas, seer, S-E-E-R, kisut, and ona are best understood as food, clothing, and ointment or oil, respectively. These specific expressions capture the man's general responsibility to provide peace, permanence, and security for his wives. So in essence, with all the data looked at, this passage is hardly negative. It provides an escape from poverty for a young woman and security and protection and upward social mobility in a house better in the house of a better place, and all the basic legal rights of a wife. Now I would like to turn my attention back to verses 1 through 4, also known as the odd-looking post-release passage. If you haven't read Exodus chapter 21 verses 1 through 4, I would encourage you to do so, or you can look at the previous video. I believe I quoted the passage already. But for time's sake, I just want to jump in real quick with the points I want to make. First of all, there seems to be 3 specific cases in which a slave could leave his master. Looking at Exodus 21 verses 2 and 3, the slave comes in single, or single in, single during the relationship, and single out. There's no issues here. The master supported the servant during the tenure with room, board, medical care, etc., and the servant provided labor in exchange for stability, provision, and legal protection. This is simply an economic exchange transaction. Then we have another case here. We have Exodus chapter 21 verse 3. Apparently the slave is married in, he's married during, and married out, with or without kids. It seems to be economically burdensome on the master or owner, especially if it is a large family that drove the Hebrew to sell himself, sold himself. There is no stipulation that the wife or the kids have to be servants too, yet the master has to feed, clothe, house, provide, and provide medical care, etc. for them out of his own pocket during their tenure. The master would have been responsible for the maintenance of the slaves' wives and children throughout the period of his service. This according to the JPS Torah commentary. But this certainly recognizes the importance of emotional attachments, servants, and his own family, and supports these values out of the pocket of the owner. It should be pointed out that the other nations around Israel had no such laws such as these. So this is a prime example of grace and goodness on God's part. I'm going to pick up with the third case in the next video. Thank you.